Welcome back to BBN After Dark. We have a ton of action from the weekend to talk about, but we've got to lead the show with the biggest storyline from the weekend, the thing that everybody is talking about, and that is the undefeated championship weekend from 15U Driskell. And what makes it even more impressive is the team that knocked 15U Floyd out of the tournament. Driskell beat them. The team that knocked 16U Dalton, because it was a 15-6U tournament, the team that knocked out Dalton, Driskell beat them in the championship. So Driskell really pulling out all the stops this weekend. A fantastic weekend for the boys at 15U Driskell. I mean, back-to-back walk-off wins in the semifinal and the championship to bring home the trophies. And what a great weekend. What a great story for this team. I believe it was a Jude Ramirez walk-off walk in the semifinal that sent them to the championship game. And then it was an Alex Ruppel walk-off single to bring home the gold. KJ, I wanted to start with you on this team. A lot of free swing guys on this team, a lot of guys in extra programs, a lot of rookies, a lot of guys working hard. I mean, this is a roster full of guys who are up-and-comers in the Bears. A lot of guys we're going to see on the top 50 prospects over the next couple months. KJ, what'd you think of this weekend win by this Driskell squad? And what'd you think of the tournament in general?
Yeah, it's a big weekend for them. People forget a lot of the guys that are on the current, top level, even the Dalton team, even that Floyd team, a lot of them at one point were on, the second level and third level teams. So, those teams aren't just there, because they aren't good enough to play on the top team. A lot of times how it works is, the best player on the second team isn't going to be the worst player on the top team. So sometimes it just works out a little different, and even though they're second team, they still got a lot of talent, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of those guys are playing on the top team at one day.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a team, and all three of us, me, Bernie, and KJ, have all coached a second level team in our coaching careers. And one of the things that has always been tough is that mental block of, if a team beats, for example, if I'm Driskell, if I'm the coach of Driskell and a team beats Floyd, how do you convince your guys that you have a chance to win that game? I mean, that's just straight grit, straight determination, a great, great effort by this team. The biggest thing for me was the defense. And this is a team with a lot of guys who've been working hard. Alex Demertzis, who's a guy I really, really like. He's a guy who's been here. He joined in like May. So I don't know if you can necessarily call him a rookie. I guess technically he's still in his first year with the Bears. He joined in May. He's been a great, great player for this team. Lucas Colson, I know, is a player that we all three love on this show. Jude Ramirez is a guy that we've all three love on the show. Nolan Chilton is a guy, Bernie, that you've been talking about over the last couple of weeks. Will Diekman was playing Gold Glove center field. He's been a guy who's kind of been in the prospect ranks for a little while. It was just a team effort on defense. So a very, very nice weekend for the Driskell squad. Um, and then one player in particular I did want to highlight is Lucas Perry, who came in. This is a guy who's been in precision pitching for a while, a guy who has been a good second team pitcher all year long. Very solid, reliable pitcher. He'll go out there every single weekend, give you 4 solid innings, but really did it all this weekend. 4 2/3 innings, 10 Ks to just 2 walks. This is a guy who's been working hard, both at his pitching and just in general on his game. Bernie, what did you think of Lucas Perry this weekend? Doing it on the mound, doing it on defense, doing it at the plate. I know that's a guy that you started to like in the last couple of weeks. What did you think of Lucas Perry?
Yeah, I'm, but really recently, as I've started working these 15, I've liked him more and more. I end up with Lucas in my group a lot, and then when we split up into full field, right, with top group and bottom group, I'm always lobbying for Lucas to come over to the top side. I think his work ethic has just stepped up here recently, and he's finally becoming like he's finally coming into that top player form. Like you say, he went out there 4 2/3, 10 Ks. Looks like he's coming in as a pitcher. I like the work ethic. I think he'll get there soon.
Yeah, been very impressed by this guy. I told Jeff before this weekend that Lucas looked fantastic on Wednesday nights in precision pitching over the last couple weeks. It was one of those things where July, we don't have any extra programs. So I think Lucas kind of came back into precision pitching in August, a little rusty, like a lot of guys did. And he was a little rusty. And then in the last 2 weeks in precision pitching, he's looked so sharp. And I told Jeff, I was like, you're going to see a different level of Lucas. He had a good outing last week, but took it to a whole nother level this week. A great outing for him. And I'll tell you what, that was another theme of this weekend, was a lot of unlikely heroes on the mound. A lot of guys who we don't necessarily talk about as big pitchers, at least up to this point, had big outings. So let's go ahead and talk about some of these guys. Several guys here, all but one of them are precision pitching guys. So it just shows you the work that these guys are putting in is definitely paying off. And I want to go ahead and start with the young gun Christian Closter. This is a guy on, obviously, this 9U squad that's just starting kid pitch for the first time. And the number one thing at 9U that you need to be able to do is throw strikes, right? That separates the good teams from the teams that don't stand a chance. Is can you throw strikes? Here was Christian Closter's line this weekend. He threw 3 innings, 2 strikeouts, 0 walks on the mound, and a 71% strike percentage. This guy was just straight pumping in the zone. You know how good this Nickerson team is on defense, so he gave his team a chance to win. Bernie, I know you've been working with Christian very one-on-one the last couple weeks. What have you seen from him in precision pitching, and did you see this great outing coming?
Yeah, I don't know if I can go out with 0 walks. I don't know if I can predict that because that's on the level for most 9U kids. But yeah, Christian got precision recently with them going to kid pitch, and what I've noticed with Christian, he's very, I guess you use the word smart. He's smarter than most 9-year-olds when it comes to starting like mechanic stuff. You say something new, he knows what you're talking about, right? He does it immediately. It's not like you explain it to him, 3, 4, and 5 times. He picks up on stuff very quickly. That's allowed us to make a lot of progress here in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, just straight pumping. I know Damian looks at Christian to be kind of that reliable guy. I know he gave him the ball on opening day for this team. Their first kid pitch game, he trusted Christian to go out there and start the first game of the year for this team. And that says something about Damian's confidence in him. And I mean, this guy's just putting in the work to be that guy. So great outing from Christian Closer. Very, very impressed. I want to go ahead and go to another guy who's just kind of gotten in precision pitching recently. A guy who's always had an electric arm, but the control was questionable. The off speed was questionable. Well, this guy, he made a promise to KJ that he was going to buckle down and really work on his pitching. He wanted to be that guy on the mound, and that's Cam Birnstill, who's looked like an ace on this team over the last couple weeks. And I know we did a segment on BBN a couple weeks ago where we said what was going to be the inning pitched rankings of 13U Floyd over the course of the fall. And all of us, I think, had Cam Bernstein 4th, or, in that conversation. None of us had him top 3, and he's looked like the best pitcher on this team over the last 2 weeks. Here's his line this weekend: 5 2/3 innings, a 0 ERA, 8 strikeouts to just 1 walk. If you would have told me that Cam Bernstein's going out there and dishing up 8K 1-walk performances, I don't know if I'd believe you, because this guy had trouble throwing strikes, in his previous times on the mound. But he was gross this weekend, really doing it all. KJ, I know you've been talking to me a lot about Cam and how he has been everything you've expected on the mound. He's lived up to his promise. But what did you think of him this weekend? It really felt like he stepped up to that ace level.
Yeah, not only do I think he has probably the best breaking ball out of my pitchers, but he throws it for strikes, and I think he relies on it more than he relies on a fastball. And he's got 2 pitches that are just so good. That curveball is so good, and his fastball, he throws it very hard. So yeah, he was just dominant. I mean, pumping strikes with every pitch, getting weak contact when guys were hitting it, and he didn't seem people, he was at one point just throwing, I think he threw like 10 straight curveballs. And, I think at that point you kind of know what's coming as a hitter, and they still could not hit it. That shows just how dominant Cam Bernstein was all weekend.
Yeah. And, one thing you said to me before he got into precision pitching was you said that you hoped he could be an ace because he has the attitude for it. He's got the right attitude to go out on Sundays and compete against the best team in the tournament and shut them down. And I think we definitely saw that this weekend. To me, he was a little timid on the mound his first couple outings. I think he was still trying to find his own. He was still trying to find the strike zone. And now it's like this guy, he knows he's better than you when he's on the mound, and that's the attitude you got to have. I know I'm better than you. It doesn't matter what pitch I'm throwing. Doesn't matter if you know what I'm throwing. I'm going to blow it right by you. And that was the attitude he had this weekend, an absolutely dominant performance. Let's move over to another guy who, again, has been kind of learning how to pitch, kind of trying to find innings on the mound. And this is a guy that, Bernie, you told me when he joined precision pitching that you weren't going to put him in the mound until he was game ready. And it took him a couple months, This guy, he's been in precision pitching for probably 4 or 5 months at this point, and it took him a little while, but now he's going out there and he is competing. He looks like the second or third best pitcher on your team lately, Bernie, and that's Harrison Bleibom. 4 innings pitched, 5 Ks, 2 walks. He's been a strike machine with, again, just like Cam, been a strike machine with both pitches, fastball and curveball, and just doing it on the mound. And just, we talk about Harrison, and of course you talk about the bat. He's been a very solid first baseman, but now you add pitching to his game, and it's hard to say he's not the most valuable player in the Bears. Bernie, what'd you think about Harrison Bleibom and his pitching outing over the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, I know that he's been in position for a while now. He told me when he joined that he was going to be a good pitcher for my team, and that's the right mentality you got to have here when you're starting out pitching. In these past 2 weeks, last week I threw him up there. It was our team's first ever GMB weekend. We were playing a tough team. And I threw him up there to see what he would do. I thought he was ready to go, but I didn't know if he was ready for that, for that good of a team to face. And he went out there. He gave us a chance to win. I think he went 5 innings, 5 runs, maybe only 2 earned, 2 walks, 5 Ks. Maybe. And then this week again, I threw him probably teams this year. And, like you said, fastball, curveball, both were working. He was throwing, probably, 60% fastballs, 40% curveballs. They were all for strikes. He didn't walk anybody. He gave us
Yeah, you cut it out at the end a little bit, Bernie, but I think I got your point. I mean, this guy, he's been dedicated to it, and that's one of the things that, Bernie, your team, I would say the biggest weakness coming into the season was pitching depth. What were we going to do when Owen Lewis wasn't on the mound? How are we going to fill those innings? And I think guys have stepped up. Cale Taylor has stepped up, and now Harrison Bleibom is stepping up. And I feel like he's just a guy who now going forward, you trust him to go out there any day, Saturday, Sunday against any team. You trust him to go out there, and he's not going to lose the game for you. It's going to give you a chance. Because there have been times, Bernie, where pitchers just haven't been able to keep you guys in the game. They haven't thrown enough strikes, and they really didn't give your team a chance to win. Harrison's not going to lose the game on the mound. So very, very impressed by him, and just a superstar outing from Harrison Bleibom over the last 2 weeks. Let's go ahead and talk about another guy. Same story, a guy who's been in precision pitching, getting his first real shot on the mound for the varsity team. Mason Geddes, 5 innings pitched, 7 Ks, 1 walk, a 1.4 ERA. This guy, I think at one point in the game, struck out 6 straight batters. I mean, he was not. Nobody even got on base until the last inning that Mason was out there. He had a perfect game going into the last inning, just up there absolutely dealing and doing it with multiple pitches. And that's kind of been the theme, is not only just throwing strikes, but also being able to throw strikes with multiple pitches. And that's what Mason was doing. Similar to Cam, there was a time where he threw like 3, 4, 5 straight curveballs and nobody could touch him. And then he was buzzing up top with the fastball and just getting a lot of swings and misses. Very, very impressed by him. I will say, this 14U Floyd team, it's hard to say they haven't been the best team in the Bears over the past 2 months or so. I mean, what they've done has been unbelievable. But I will say the one little weakness that this team has come across is the depth of pitching in these hard 5-game tournaments, right? Where you have to go out there, you're not playing any easy teams, and you have to play 5 games. Do you have enough pitching to stay competitive in all those games? And one of the things I prioritize going into this weekend when, we're playing game time, we got a chance to play a team on Saturday that wasn't necessarily our level, and I needed to find new pitching, and Mason Geddes, he stepped up and showed me that I can rely on him as that other guy. So very, very impressed with his outing. And then one more guy I did want to mention, Noah Hendricks. Again, first chance on the varsity team, goes up there, 3 innings pitched, 5 Ks, 1 walk, a 0 ERA. I haven't necessarily seen this guy pitch too much, but I know I've been very, very in love with him. His work ethic in the practices, he goes out there, goes hard every single week. You never have to question his work ethic, and just been very, very impressed by this guy. Everything he's done. So thought it was a great outing for him. Okay, let's go ahead and move into 18U Floyd. They also had an undefeated weekend on the weekend, and another great pitching performance from the weekend was Elliot Myers. This is a guy who felt like he hasn't quite been right 100% since he got hurt in the middle of the summer, and he comes out and shows to everybody, hey, even when I'm not at my best, I'm still the nastiest pitcher in the Bears. 8 Ks, 1 walk, 0 ERA, and 5 innings in the championship game. Just absolutely nasty. I mean, this guy, he is definitely, when he's at his best, the grossest pitcher in the Bears, doing it all here. KJ, wanted to get your thoughts. Elliot, he's been kind of inconsistent over the course of the fall, but this just to me felt like one of those outings that it's like, I'm still here. I'm reminding everybody that I'm still that guy. What'd you think of Elliot's pitching performance, and what'd you think of 18U Floyd this weekend?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for Elliott is limiting walks. And when he is throwing strikes, I think he is the best pitcher in the Bears. I saw Elliott pitch, a couple weeks ago, and I think he went deep into the game, but he didn't have his best stuff. And it just goes to show how good he still is. Even when he doesn't have his best stuff, he can still keep them in the game. But yeah, throwing strikes for him was a big thing, and when he does that, I think he is the best pitcher.
Yeah, I mean, this guy, just like we talked about with Cam, it felt like watching this outing. I was watching on the Game Changer video, but you could feel through the video that like Elliott just knew he was better than his opponent. And whether that was true or not, he went out there and proved it himself. Even if he wasn't better than his opponent, he wasn't going to let you beat him in this outing. Just absolutely gross. This HU Floyd team really took care of business this weekend. This team has been kind of up and down. Obviously, the narrative for this team has been they were kind of searching for those who's going to step up in the offensive department outside of Mac and Brennan. And a lot of guys had really good weekends. Adam Tobias didn't get out this weekend. He's a guy who I know that in the past Rob has looked for as this guy to, kind of step up in that offense. He didn't get out all weekend long. Kind of a vintage Adam Tobias weekend. 6 hits, all singles. Didn't make it out all weekend. Fred Smith, another good weekend for him. He's starting to look like he is the most reliable Birnstill guy from the summer. A very nice weekend, 4 for 8 at the plate, did not strike out, 1 walk as well. Just took care of business. Elliott had a nice hitting weekend as well. And even Rocky Tucker, I thought, had a solid weekend at the plate. But a lot of different guys stepping up on the offensive side. Bernie, what'd you think of HNU Floyd this weekend? Felt like they really, even when it was close, it never felt like they were going to lose all weekend long. They just kind of took care of business. Several different guys stepped up on the mound. Several different guys stepped up at the plate. What'd you think of AT Floyd this weekend, Bernie?
Brady Heck, I know, is his first outing back. He had a very nice outing, and Mac only threw 2 innings this weekend. I think Mac is arguably their best pitcher. I think that most people would probably say Elliott, but Mac's in that conversation with Elliott, and he only had to throw 2 innings this weekend for them to take care of business. And like I said, the play, couple guys had big weekends. I think that's Fred Smith's 3rd straight weekend of having like a good weekend, what we classify as. So he seems like he's starting to round into form, and yeah, a good weekend.
Yeah, it was one of those things where it's like it felt like the attitude was good for this team this weekend. It feels like sometimes this team hasn't quite been sure of itself. Still trying to find their identity. Obviously, this fall is a little bit weird because you take basically 2 teams and combine them, right? Because you had the 17, 18U guys, and then the 18-year-olds graduated and the 16U guys joined in, right? So I feel like this team has spent the first couple weeks of the fall trying to find their identity, trying to figure out who's going to step up. And this weekend, it felt like they were just a team. It felt like they all knew what their job was. It felt like they were never going to lose. They felt confident. And to me, this is kind of a stepping stone for this team. I believe they have 5 weekends left, and I think you're going to see this team really go on a run, even when they play in those GMB tournaments. I think this team's going to be tough to beat over the course of the rest of the season, especially if Elliott's dealing like that. Mac only pitched 2 innings, but he was great in those 2 innings. So I think you're going to be very, very impressed by this team going forward. Let's go ahead and run through some of our other ages, and starting with 12U Birnstill. And this team, a 1-2 record, but I don't think that is at all indicative of how they played. They played probably, Bernie, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Did Rebels Trout end up winning the tournament this weekend?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, so you guys played the best team in the tournament on Saturday and played them tight. A 7-4 game that was winnable the entire time, played them tight, and then of course got another win on Saturday against a solid team. So I thought the 1-2 record was not indicative of how well you guys played. It feels like this team constantly, new guys are stepping up. Every time that this team has a weakness, it feels like within like 3-4 weeks it's addressed and you have an answer for it, right? Looking at this team, it was a big thing of who is going to step up offensively, right? And Rudy Montenegro Langley, a guy we've been talking about on the show, was just a beast at the plate. Even his outs were hit really hard. I know he had an absolute screamer for a double this weekend that was just absolutely crushed. And another guy, Trey Vonderhyde, I thought had a really good weekend. I saw 2 at-bats from him where he hit a ball hard that just, smoked it right at the second baseman, and he got caught and he was out, And then I saw another time where he hit a hard hit ball that got caught and he was out. But it felt like the at-bats were really, really good from Trey Vonderhyde. It feels like this team constantly guys are stepping up. And Bernie, what'd you think of the team this weekend? It feels like the guys, even if they haven't quite emerged yet, I don't know if you could say Trey and Rudy are stars yet, but it feels like that they're going to be, right? That's kind of how I feel about the team. But what are your thoughts on the 12U Birnstill Squires this weekend, Bernie?
Yeah, Saturday. Like you said, we played two good games. We won the first game 7-4, and we lost the second game 7-4. But I was telling the boys I was more impressed with the 7-4 loss than I was 7-4 win. Just how we played. We played a very, very, very good team. Probably, like I said, one of the best teams we've seen this year. And Harris William went out there. He went out there and shoved. Gave us a chance. And we had the tying run, I believe, on first base in the last inning. So our approach was great throughout the game. And then Sunday is what it is. We didn't play to, I think, what we all think we can play to. We put ourselves in a couple bad spots, falling behind hitters, stuff like that, like made a couple of just routine errors. So Sunday wasn't our best day, but Saturday was for sure a positive thing. And some of these guys, man, like Trey's going to be a superstar soon. Rudy has been the guy who's impressed me the most from when he came into now. I think he's just, weeks maybe away from being, this team's cleanup hitter, 5-hitter, and being a legit superstar. Both those guys are all bought into the programs, and that's what even makes them more exciting for the team.
Yeah, this Birnstill squad over 500, and look, this is a team that not too long ago struggled to win a game, period. Back when they were youth prep, in their 10U season, back when they were my team, 10U Floyd, there were weekends where we didn't even play one competitive game. We'd go out there, get our teeth kicked in 3 games in a row and go home, So just to see how far this team has come, where all of a sudden they're competing with good teams, and every single weekend you're not getting blown out, and your record's over 500. To me, this feels like a very similar spot to where the current 14U Floyd team was when I took them over. It's so easy to forget that my current team, 14U Floyd, when I took them over was below 500, and the fall season I took them over, we finished 21-20, 1 game above 500, or like 19-18. It's 1 game above 500, and that's currently where your team is right now, Bernie. And it just feels like that winner where you're just a 500 team and you're starting to feel a little bit of taste of success. You have that winner where everybody's bought in and everybody, you're starting to feel like you can compete, but you're all hungry to be better. This winner is going to be that magical winner that you're just going to see this team come out in the spring, refresh, and really start kicking some teams' teeth in. And it's going to be very, very impressive from this team. I think the personnel is already there. We've talked about this with a couple different teams. The personnel's there. You don't need to add anybody from the outside. There may be a player who walks in the door can help you, but even if there isn't, I think the personnel's there to be a very good winning team, a 50-win type team. But I'm very impressed with what this team has been over the course of the entire season, and it just feels like every week a new guy is stepping up. So very, very impressive. Let's go ahead and move on to 13U Floyd. A nice weekend for these guys, 2-1 on the weekend. So a double positive weekend, a winning weekend. And their loss on Sunday was a 1-run heartbreaker type loss, a game that was tight the entire way and against a good team. So this team, we've had questions about the pitching staff. We've had questions about the lineup, who's going to step up. And it felt like this weekend was one of those weekends where, like, it didn't matter who hit, up and down the lineup. Everybody was crushing it. Josh Tyler was crushing it. Giovanni Palucci, I thought, had some really good at-bats. He was crushing it. And Owen Weibrecht, a guy who we kind of look at as being a defensive specialist for now, and maybe next spring he'll be able to hit. I saw him rope a ball this weekend, and it just feels like everybody's buying in. Vibes were good. good. The team was passionate. The team was competing all weekend long. And we already talked about kind of Cam Bernstein stepping up on the pitching side. But KJ, I was really impressed by these guys. I haven't been in your dugout very much this fall just because, we've been at different locations. Our times have conflicted. But I was in your dugout for your game on Saturday, and the vibes were great. Everybody was taking good at bats up and down the lineup. And what'd you think of the boys this weekend, KJ, for 13 Floyd?
Yeah, I think the boys are to a point now where, we've accepted, we're not going to be a 50-win team this year. We're not going to be a 60-win team this year. We've accepted that. And I think, we're just trying to finish out the year and play good baseball. I think it was a huge confidence boost that, we've been able to still compete in these high-level tournaments after, losing some guys, having a whole new pitching staff, some bottom team guys stepping into the top team lineup. And we've still been, I think we've been more competitive than we were before. So I think that was a big confidence thing. And this weekend we seem much more confident, much more loose, and I think it showed in our play.
Yeah, and let's keep in mind, KJ, I mean, this team, when your guys kind of hope for that 60-win season died, that was in the summer. That was with those guys who ended up leaving. And now it feels like these guys that are still here, just everybody's fighting, everybody. And to me, I do think you guys have been more competitive. I think you've been more competitive in the last couple weeks. I think having kind of this new outlook on the pitching staff where it's like, hey, we've got all these innings and it's anybody's innings. Anybody's innings who wants to come and grab them. I think that's motivated Cam to work hard. You've seen some guys who don't necessarily pitch. They're jumping into precision pitching, like Avery McNicholas, like Owen Weibrecht. These guys who aren't big pitchers. Oh, we have a need at pitcher. Shoot, let me get in there. I could take some innings, right? And I think it's just kind of rejuvenated everybody. I think in the short term, it hurt the team, but I think in the long term, it's going to make you guys better. I'm super excited to see what this team looks like next spring. Because just like Birnstill, I feel like the guys are already there. I mean, Diego Buccio, he looks like an MVP candidate. ZZ Garcia obviously has always been an MVP candidate. Knifrey stepping up, Josh Tyler stepping up, and it just feels like this team. The future is bright for this squad. Very, very excited to see what this 13 Floyd squad does going forward. Moving on to 14U Floyd, it was a 3-1 weekend. This team continues to be very, very dominant. Um, took a tough loss on Sunday, but again, this is what I told the boys in the meeting. We are 33-7. No, I'm sorry, 34-7 in our last 41 games. It's hard to get mad at them, for they put up a stinker. Look, we did. We played bad. Second game Sunday, we came out, we put up a stinker. It was a bad game against a team we shouldn't have lost to. But I told the boys after the meeting, listen, I've griped to you guys after some wins. I told, I was telling somebody how many teams get kind of griped at after a 20-2 victory. We won 20-2 on Saturday, and I had something to gripe about them about, and on Sunday, listen, we laid an egg. We didn't look very good, but I told the boys, look, we're 34-7 in our last 41 games. We've been the best team in the Bears. I'll give you guys a pass on this one. And if this loss means it doesn't happen again for the rest of the season because this loss is so fresh in our head, then fine, I'll live with it. But I will say this weekend, a lot of guys stepped up, I've been asking for another guy to step up on the mound. I've been asking for another guy to step up at the plate. I want the at-bats to get more competitive up and down the lineup, and guys are stepping up. Jack Kester with Brendan Bass was out this weekend on Saturday, and Jack Kester had a chance to hit leadoff, and he took a really bad at-bat, his first at-bat of the weekend. And I kind of told him, I was like, that's what you're going to give me at leadoff? If you had the chance to be leadoff hitter, that's what you're going to give me? After that, he didn't take another bad at-bat all weekend. I don't think he took an at-bat where he didn't hit a ball hard all weekend after that. Just very, very impressive. Mason Geddes has just been so impressive at the plate lately. This is a guy who kind of went through that season where it's like he started off slow, and then the middle season he got super hot, and he was the 5-hitter, and everybody was talking about him. And then he kind of slumped again, and now it feels like he's taking better bats than he has all year. Just super impressed by what he's been giving me over the last couple weeks. Other guys, Joey Burgess, it felt like this was his first weekend where he was consistent all weekend long in terms of how good his at-bats were. obviously he had the home run on the varsity squad a couple weeks ago, but I think that might have been his only hit of the weekend, or one or two hits of the weekend. This weekend it felt like every single at bat he was hitting a ball hard or putting up a good at bat. So it just feels like this team, even when we don't necessarily come out and play our best, it feels like we're still learning stuff about the team. Guys are still stepping up, and again, a stinker on Sunday. I don't feel any differently about this team and the dominance that they have had and are going to have over the next couple weekends. We've got 3 weekends to get 10 more wins, and I think it's definitely doable. I want to be a 60-win team once again this year. Without all those rainouts, we definitely would have been a 60-win team. So I'm trying to do it even with the rainouts, add a little bit more adversity and see if we can still do it. So very, very impressed by this team. And let's go ahead and move on to 15U, Floyd. This team went out and I believe here, let me see if I can pull it up. I believe went 2-0 on Saturday and then ended up losing Sunday. Just like they did. So 2-1 on the weekend. Again, lost a heartbreaker. And I'll tell you what, they go into that Sunday game and I believe it's first and second, no outs with Landon Nixon and Weston Brody coming on in the last inning. And it just felt like a game they were gonna win. And you know what? They didn't. The guys didn't come through. And it feels like the same thing as 14U, where it's like Landon and Wes have come through so many times that what do you even say the time they don't? They just didn't come through this time. It is what it is. That's baseball. Sometimes the Pirates beat the Yankees. It is what it is. And it happens. But I did want to get your thoughts, KJ, on this team because it feels like Jack Dalton goes back to 16U, and it feels like it's just a new guy stepping up every single week. I know you've talked about that with my team at 14U, but even with the Switchy team, Wes Brody looks like an MVP. Andrew Willeret has gotten back to his MVP ways. Guys like Shockley and Poor and Saxon and Braden King and Noah Hendricks. I mean, it feels like different guys are stepping up every single week. What do you think about this 15 Floyd team this weekend, and what do you think about them going forward?
Oh yeah, I think that's why, what makes these teams so good. I think the best teams are the deepest teams. And, this team can lose people. This team can lose people to injury. This team can call up from the bottom team. And, they don't suffer at all. It's just a new guy stepping up all the time. And, this team is just so deep and they do all the little things right. They throw strikes and they swing out of their shoes. They hit for power. I know Andrew Willeret added a home run this weekend. But all different guys, bottom of the order, there's threats to hit the ball over the fence from the 1 spot in the order to the 10 spot. And even the guys on the bench can put some balls over the fence. So I know Evan Little at one point this weekend was sitting on the bench, and he's a guy who we've seen hit a ball, a mile. So, that bottom to the order or bottom to the top, this order is threatening.
Yeah, and I think, definitely over the past 2 months, I think 14 Floyd's been the best team in the Bears, but I think this team has been the best team in the Bears all season long. Obviously they're our wins leader, they're our tournament wins leader. They're tied with 14U in terms of how many tournaments they've won. And it just feels like this team doesn't really have a clear weakness. If you had told Rob that you can replay that situation over and over again with 2 guys at the plate, he's not going to change his answer. He'd have Landon and Wes up there in that spot over and over again. This time they didn't come through. It is what it is. Landon and Wes have come through 100 times before that, so it is what it is. I think this team, nothing's changed for them. I think it's still run of the mill. These guys are going to take care of business going forward. Very, very impressed with how their season has gone. And then the last team I did want to go ahead and touch on here was 6U Dalton. Kind of same story as 13U Floyd, 2-0 on Saturday, and then lose a heartbreaker on Sunday. Sunday, I believe they were down like 6-0. They had a bad first inning, a couple key errors, and it allowed the opposing team to kind of take advantage. But then this team fought back the rest of the way. And if you remove the first inning, this team wins the game 6-1 in free fashion, but they just couldn't quite overcome that bad first inning. Bernie, I did want to get your thoughts on this team. I will say the one thing about the offense for this team is it does feel like each weekend it's a different guy kind of at the top of the OPS leaderboard. We talked about the last couple weekends. It's been Ty, it's been JD. Well, this weekend, it was Jack Dalton and Santi. It feels like this was kind of a similar story to my 14U squad early in the season. It feels like they haven't quite had everybody clicking on the same weekend offensively. They've been able to win games with their pitching and their defense, but it feels like they haven't really had a weekend yet where every single guy is clicking, where you get a good weekend from Jack, Santi, Roberts, Kreitler, Zazweta, Dormeyer, Dalton, all in the same weekend, So what do you think about this team, Bernie, going forward, and what do you think about their weekend this weekend?
Yeah, they hit the ball well. So it looks like. They've added over 400, over 1,000 OPS as a team in those 3 games. Santi had a massive weekend. Jack Dalton had a massive weekend. He was top of their OPS leaderboard. Elijah had a decent outing on Saturday. Santi and Teagan both pitched really well. I think it just came down to 1 inning for them. Maybe early on Sunday, they were ready. They made a couple errors, and I was telling inning, but with 0 runs, right? It wasn't necessarily his fault. He's been a great pitcher all season long for that team. So, I've said a couple times I think Dalton is still our best high school team. I'd still back that. It's just one bad defensive inning. They hit the ball well all weekend. Their pitchers pitch well all weekend. It just comes down to that 1 inning. Looks like.
Yep, and just one of those things that's like just uncharacteristic of this team. I mean, this team is a superstar defensive squad. Teagan Kreitler very rarely makes errors, so I think it's one of those things that if Teagan makes an error, man, it's like, oh, it is what it is. I mean, I think he's got like 3 errors this season as a shortstop, which is unbelievable. I mean, this guy just makes every play. So it's one of those things. Chalk it up. It is what it is. And I don't really have any concerns about the Dalton team moving forward. To go ahead and end the show here, I did kind of want to open up the floor, and if there's 3 weekends left for our youth team, so obviously youth prep, and then 11U to 14U, there's 3 weekends left, and then 15 to 18U, we've got 5 weekends left. So I want to go ahead and start with youth. In the next 3 weekends, obviously you're trying to finish the season strong. You're trying to get that win number as high as it can get, trying to add a couple more tournament wins. But for you guys, I want to go through each team, and what do you think is the biggest thing you need to learn about this team over the next 3 weeks going into the offseason? And let's go ahead and start with 11U Floyd. This is a team still trying to kind of find its legs. I think it's been a tale of a little bit of inconsistency, right? You have a guy who will throw strikes one weekend and then doesn't throw strikes the next weekend. A guy who will have a great weekend at the plate and then next weekend, struggle a little bit. And I think that's been the tale. For me, I think over the next 3 weekends, I think this 11U Floyd team needs to find its guys on the mound. I think you need to find who are going to be the guys that going into the offseason, okay, I know this is my rotation. Even if it's only 2 guys right now, and then you'll find the other guys over the course of the winter. I want to know, I think Carson Griffith has kind of proved that he is that guy. Who else is going to be the guy next to him that you just know is going to be consistent? I can trust you every single weekend. And for me, that's what I want to learn about 11U over the next 3 weeks. KJ, with this team, 11U Floyd, what is the one thing you want to learn about this team over the next 3 weeks going to the offseason?
Yeah, I think I want to know, who's going to be the superstar. I think it's changed a lot for us. I think at one point we were saying, oh, Brinsky. At one point we were saying Dominic Ahern. When the season started, I think we were saying maybe this Lucas Closter is going to be the superstar. And now maybe we're saying Owen Haynes has stepped up as the superstar. So that's kind of what I'm sitting here thinking. Who's going to be this team's, ZZ Garcia? Who's going to be this team's Harrison Blowbaum? That's what I think I'm wondering. And I'm going to find out next season.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a great call. Moving on to 12U, again, this team I think has had a great season. Every year, and Bernie, honestly, as a coach, this has kind of been your MO. Every year, I don't think you've had a single season, Bernie, where your team won less games than the previous year, right? In your entire coaching career?
I do not believe so.
Yeah, so every year your team, Bernie, has won more games than it has the previous year. So you look at that trend and you say, okay, we're going to be a winning team next year. For me, over the next 3 weeks, what I want to learn about this team is who are the top 5 hitters in the order. And I think you've kind of shuffled some guys through. You haven't really had a consistent 4 hitter all year long. I think we know Owen Lewis, Cale Taylor, Harrison Blaybaum are going to be 3 guys in the top 5 in the order. I want to know who's going to be those other 2 guys, and whether the exact order changes up, I don't know. But the personnel, the top 5, in the next 3 weeks, I want to go into the offseason knowing who are my best 5 hitters and go from there. But Bernie, what about you? What is the one thing you want to learn about this team over the next 3 weeks?
Yeah, I think this is only, of course, 3 weeks, and then maybe a little bit starting in the winter. But with stuff like the Winter League starting up for these guys, things like the workout starting, really getting in the gym, I want to find out who are the guys that are willing to do the work. At this point, right, when we turn 12U, you're basically available to do any program in the Bears you want. It's just a matter of if you want to do it, right? Are you willing to do the work? I think Harrison's already shown that because he's been available to, or he's been able to do some of those programs. But are those top 5 guys that you're talking about? Who are the guys who are willing to work the hardest over the winter? Because, I'm a big believer in that. The off season is what makes the season. It's not just a bad season; it's the off season that makes the season. So that's what I'm looking for here in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I think that's a great call, Bernie. I mean, this team, I don't think that streak is going to break, Bernie, where I think you're going to win more games with this team next year than you did the previous year. And I think that's a great call for this team going forward. Let's go ahead and move on to 13U Floyd. And for me, this is a team that I think the personnel is already there. I think, and maybe they're not yet on the top team, but I think they're in the organization, right? I don't think this team needs to add somebody outside the organization. So for me, over the next 3 weeks, what I want to learn is who's for real. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of names at 13U that we talk about. There's a lot of guys, there's a lot of new players coming in. I want to separate kind of the fake from the real. Who's actually serious about being a great player and who just wants to be on the roster, who just wants to have the glory of being a top team player. I want to know who's for real. And over the next 3 weeks, for me, everybody's going to get a chance to show they're for real. And I want to find out who really is. Because for me, I think Cam Birnstill proved he's for real. He's not here to just say he plays, AAA major. He's not here to just be on a winning team and put trophies up in his closet. He's here to be dominant and to be the best player when he steps on the field. So for me, I want to learn who's for real on this 13 Floyd squad over the next 3 weeks. But KJ, what about you? Over the next 3 weeks, what do you want to learn about your squad?
Yeah, I kind of want to learn, how much of the role players going to take advantage of the opportunities. Like you said, the next coming weeks, I'm not trying to chase a win total. I'm just trying to find some guys for the offseason, find my guys for next spring. So, I'm trying to figure out what guys are going to step up and to my bottom of the order. I'm pretty confident in knowing that the top guys are going to be good again. ZZ Garcia is going to be good again. Garrett Knight, Diego Buccio, Knifey Marcus. But I want to see guys like Phil Lobeck, guys like Gio Palucci, guys like Georgie Buhazen, guys like Owen Weibrecht. Which one of those guys is going to be, in the same situation where, ZZ was on the bottom team, had a great winter, and he started, batting leadoff on the top team next year and was an MVP caliber player. What kind of guy is going to be that out of the guys we have right now?
Yeah, I think skies are bright for the 13 Floyd team going into the winter, and it's just one of those things that it's just going to be such a motivational tactic this winter that you guys were a 50-win team last year. You come in this year, have a great start, and then kind of fall off, and now you're in this rebuilding process. And to me, it's just a motivational tactic that, hey, it's anybody's lineup. It's anybody's lineup. Who cares what the lineup was the last game of the fall? Because this spring it could look completely different, and I think that's the biggest motivational tactic. Moving on to 14U Floyd. This team for me, I think they've answered all the questions I had for them all year long. So the one thing I'm looking for over the next 3 weeks is who can handle the competition, because now that you're at this point where I think, there's not much more for us to accomplish this season. Obviously, we have the goal of getting to 60 wins. I want to get to 10 tournament wins. So we have goals, but I think we've proven everything we need to prove over the course of this year. We lost some guys last summer. We lost some guys and we come back just as good this year. With the roster we had last year, we never went on a 29-4 stretch. We never went on a 33-7 stretch. I mean, we were never this good last year with those guys. We lose them, and it's like, okay, who cares? We're even better without them. So for me, I want to know now that you've had this team, now that you're at the top, you're a 4-hitter on the best team in the Bears. Now that you're here, can you stay there? Can you stay at the top? Because now that you're there, everybody's hungry. Everybody's chasing your job because everybody wants to be on this team and everybody wants to start and everybody wants playing time. Everybody wants at bats. Everybody wants innings. Can you stay there with everybody trying to take your job? That's what I want to learn about this team over the next 4 weeks. I want to know who's going to be like, bro, you can do all the workouts you want. I'm going to work harder than you. You can sign up for multiple free swing sessions. I'm going to work harder. I'm going to take more swings than you. I'm going to get in front of ground balls. I'm going to move faster than you in 4 corners. That's what I want to learn about this team is who's going to be able to not just get to the top of the order, but stay there with everybody competing against them. Bernie, for you, kind of that outsider perspective, what do you want to learn about 14 Floyd over the next 3 weeks?
Yeah, I think that they've shown everything they need to show this year. But for me, I just want to kind of focus in on a couple guys who I think that, you know, have the potential to be starters, like permanent stars in this lineup. I've been looking at a lot of Logan Payne lately, who's come up in a massive couple spots for him. He's came through for that team. I know he had a big in that Sunday loss. He had a big bases clearing double. Maybe like Don Palucci, who had a decent little weekend. Evan Lancaster has had a couple decent weekends on the mound and a good weekend this week with the bat. Quinn Steinbeck has had a couple good weekends recently with the bat. He's taking good at bats, and like you mentioned earlier, Joey Burgess. I just want to see which one of these guys is willing to outwork everybody else and be the starter next season.
Yeah, this team, I think, not only is it the best team in the Bears, at least over the past 2 months, I do think it's the deepest age. Definitely competing with 15U. 15U's got a ton of good prospects, and you saw that with Driskell. But it's definitely, at worst, the second deepest age in the Bears as well. So a lot of guys hungry to come up and take jobs. Very, very excited to see how that plays out over the winter. Moving on to that 15U Floyd squad, for me, I just want to see kind of who are the real superstars. Andrew Willeret was a superstar last year. I don't think you can call him a superstar over the course of the summer, but he's looked like a superstar this fall. What is the real Andrew Willeret? That's what I want to know over the next 5 weeks. Is he just back? Is he just the guy? Same thing with kind of guys like Ivan Saxon, who he's kind of the opposite. He looked like a superstar this summer, and he's kind of not been great this fall. Logan Eckert was hot in the summer, has not been so good in the fall with the bat. Weston Brody had a slow start and now looks like a superstar. So I want to know, forget about streaks, forget about who's hot, who's cold, forget about slumps. Tell me who's the real superstars and who's just a flash in the pan. So for me, over the next 5 weeks, I want to know. I want to know who the best three hitters are on this team, because honestly, I don't know. I think right now it's hard to say Wes Brody's not in that top three, but if you really look at talent, I don't think he is. But I want to find out concrete evidence. Show me who are the best three hitters on this team going forward. KJ, for you, what do you want to learn about this 15 Floyd team over the course of the rest of the fall?
Yeah, I kind of want to know who are going to be the next, big time guys step up. I remember last year, a lot of these guys weren't on this team when the beginning of this team. They lost the whole team. So they had to build from the ground up. So what guys, are going to be the guys right now on that Driskell side that we talked about earlier in the show? What guys on that Driskell squad are going to be the guys to step up on that Floyd squad in the future?
Yeah, again, the deepest age in the Bears, I think for sure, a ton of hard workers, and I'm very excited to see how that's going to play out, because it's one of those things where you know, kind of like, unlike 12U, for example, right? 12U, there are openings in the starting lineup for somebody to come in and steal a job. But at 15U, we have all these promising prospects, but there's no openings. There's no jobs. So it's like, it's not about just showing that you're a good prospect. You actually have to take somebody's job. So I think that's a great call. I want to know whose job is going to get taken, who's going to be the one taking somebody's at bats, because there are no at bats to go around. You got to take them from somebody else. So that's going to be very, very interesting. Moving into 16U, for me, this one's a tough one. I would say, when I was kind of going through each team in my head and what do I want to see from them over the rest of the season, I think this one's by far the toughest, because they've kind of done everything. They were the best team in Bears history last year. No Bears team had ever won 70 games, and they did it. This was the best pitching staff in Bears history last year, and they come into this year, and obviously it's a different ball game, because they were high school, so they missed the entire April, May. So obviously they're not going to win 70 games. They're just not going to play enough games. But in terms of the win percentage, they've basically come out and been that team once again. So this one's tough for me, because I think, you kind of know who the stars are, who the big pitchers are. For me, I would say the one question I have for this team the rest of the season, and I haven't really gone specific with a player. All of my kind of big questions have been for the team as a whole. But for me, I want to know, is Elijah Underwood actually back? This is a guy who was probably one of the most disappointing pitchers in the summer. Just didn't look like himself. I think injury had a big thing to do with it. I think his high school team had a big reason to do with it. But he just wasn't himself. And now, over the last 3 weeks, he looks amazing. He's got the lowest ERA on the team this fall. He's going out and striking out high numbers again. So over the next 5 weeks, I want him to confirm that he's back. He's all the way back. He's an ace. He should be looked at as a fall Cy Young candidate. And for me, that's kind of the biggest thing I'm looking for over the next 5 weeks for this team. But Bernie, what about you? What is the biggest thing you're looking for this Dalton squad over the next 5 weeks?
Yeah, like you said, I don't think there's very many questions with this team. This team has proven everything they proved, this year and last year. But I think you could kind of ask the question that you asked at 15 years, like who the top dogs here, who the top three hitters are. I think most people say Teagan and Vince, but they struggled a little bit here recently. Ty has been a great hitter all year. Is he a top three hitter? Is Jack Dalton, who's coming up from 14U, is he still an MVP candidate at 16U? Santiago Story's bad leadoff for them. He had a very good weekend this weekend. Is Jack Roberts back? Is Jackson Dormeyer, the Renaissance season he has he a top three hitter now? I think you answer that. I think those are the questions I would ask about the team, but this team's proven everything they need to prove.
Yeah, I mean this squad is just it's a god squad for real. I mean the top 10, like the thing about 16U is it's probably not quite as deep as like 15 and 14U, but like the top 7, 8 guys in this team are just so good. And it really is a dynasty type roster. So very, very impressed with them. Not a lot of questions for that squad. And then finally we have 18U Floyd, and I think this team for me was the easiest to come up with questions because there are questions about this team. And for me, it's not about performance. I think this team's going to be just fine. I think the win record's going to be fine. I think they're going to win. Of the last 5 weekends, they're probably going to win 3 more tournaments at least. So for me, it's not a question of how well they're going to do. It's who. And that's kind of the question for this team all the time is who's going to step up. I think it's very obvious that Mac and Elliott are the 1-2 in the rotation. Who's it going to be outside of that? Obviously several guys have kind of been consistent, good pitchers to this team, but who else is going to step up to that third guy? Obviously the same question we've been asking all fall. Who's going to step up besides Mac and Brennan? But for me, I think the number one question, and I've asked this before, but of the next 5 weeks, I want to know who the real Birnstill guys are. This team that in the summer had the best season of that team's history, that 6U Birnstill squad, came up from the ground up and worked their way up. Obviously, that kind of goes into what we were talking about, where Bernie, that team never had a season where they won less games than they did the previous year. And now they get to the situation where they're around superstars like Mac and Brennan, which wasn't necessarily the case on that 6U Birnstill squad. That was kind of a team effort. There wasn't really superstars on that team. Now you've got these superstars next to you, and they're kind of pushing you to step up. I want to know how they're going to step up over the next 5 weeks. It feels like Fred Smith's kind of coming to his own. Oliver Saxon has shown flashes. He hasn't really been consistent, but he's shown flashes of being that guy. Rocky Tucker, again, has shown flashes of being that guy. And even guys who aren't necessarily on the top team right now, Will Brotherton, I think, has worked really hard in practice and kind of been putting in that work and that time. So for me, I think the question is which of those 16 Birnstill's guys is going to step up for this team. But KJ, for you, what's the biggest question for ATU Floyd over the last 5 weeks?
Oh yeah, I think it's the same question, that we've been asking. Who's going to be that next guy up? Who's going to be the guy to contribute offensively after Brennan and Mac? I thought we saw good signs from Adam Tobias. I think Brady Heck's been hitting great recently. Andrew Engelken looks like he's starting to get back to the form he was in the spring. So, Rose Selby. So I think there's a lot of different options, and they're very underrated in how deep they are. I don't think we talk about that enough. But who's going to be that third superstar?
Yeah, 100%. Real quick, I know I said I was going to end the show, but I do have one more question, and just real quick, one word answer for each. Who do you guys think is going to be the number one pick in the BWL drafts at each one? So let's go ahead and start with 12-13U. Who's the number one pick, KJ?
I think it's got to be ZZ Garcia.
Yeah, that's I would say as well. Bernie, same answer, or do you go in a different route?
No, it's gotta be easy. Great bat, great arm, great pitching, great defense. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the easy one. I'm gonna go ahead and skip 14-50 for now because I think that one is the toughest one. Let's go to 16-18U. I think there's obviously an obvious answer here in Mac Floyd just because he's the most obvious case for a dual threat player, but definitely guys like Brennan, obviously, who's probably the best hitter in the draft. Teagan Kreitler, who's another one of those two-way players. But for me, I got to go Mac. Bernie, what about for you?
Matt.
Yep, 100%. And then KJ?
You got to go with Matt.
Okay, and now let's go ahead and go to 14-15U. I think this one's interesting. There's so much talent, but honestly, there's not necessarily a certified superstar. A lot of great players. There's definitely more great players in this draft than there are in the other two drafts, but I'm not sure if there's a player as good as Mac Floyd in the 18U draft and ZZ in the 13U draft. So I'm interested to see what you guys say on this one. KJ, let's start with you. Who's the number one overall pick in the 14-15U draft in your mind?
Yeah, when I look at these teams, I think you don't have a big time dual threat like you do in the other ages at the number one overall pick. Zizi can do it all. Matt can do it all. You don't really have the big time hitters don't really pitch. The big time pitchers aren't really great hitters. I think you got to go with a guy who was dominant in last year's BWL. He's always consistent. He's always good. Right now, if I have the number one pick, I'm taking Landon Nickerson.
Oh wow, okay. That's actually not the route I thought you were gonna go. Okay. Bernie, how about you? Who's the number one pick in your eyes?
Yeah, I think the closest thing to dual threat maybe. Lucas Wilburn's putting up a massive season with the bat and arm. I think he's the closest thing to it, but he's still younger than the other guys. I think I would have to go with Landon Nickerson's probably the best hitter in the draft. I think that's the route you have to go here without an obvious dual threat answer.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I guess I'm going to be the lone man here, and I am going to go the dual threat way. It's just one of those things that Landon definitely is the best hitter in the draft. I think there's no doubt about that, and he's the most impactful bat. But there's so many good bats, and I feel like if you can get a guy with the first overall pick that also is going to be a very dominant arm, I think you got to go with it. And for me, I think the closest thing to that is Andrew Willeret. To me, it feels like he's kind of back with the bat, and I think there's never been a case that he's not a great hitter, and he's had a breakout pitching season as well. I think you could ask the question, will he be as good against Bears as he is against other teams? Just because, he's a strike pumper, he throws a lot of fastballs, so you wonder if he will be as dominant, but Landon Nixon's not going to pitch, so I think Willeret definitely gives you that option to have a big arm, so I think I got to go him. So very, very interesting. I think that draft is going to be insane for the BWL because there's so much talent, and what order those players are going to go is going to be awesome. But this has been another good episode of BBN After Dark. Bernie, KJ, thank you so much for joining me. And we will talk to everybody once again on the Friday show to break down all of the action once again. But thank you guys for joining me, and we'll talk to y'all next week.